Allow me to paint a picture for you. It's been snowing all day. The next day, the ground is covered in black ice. As you are walking to a meeting, you absentmindedly scroll on your phone, as we all do, and slip on black ice. The next time it snows, you suddenly find yourself being much more careful and looking out for the ground beneath you. Here in New England, we know these snow days all too well. But why were you more careful the second time? Well, you knew the last time it snowed, you slipped on ice, and not wanting to do that again, you found yourself being much more careful. Your brain saw a situation, identified a previous outcome, and took steps to avoid the same negative outcome. This is déjà vu. Déjà vu is a term coined by French philosopher Émile Zola. Déjà vu is triggered in the temporal lobe of the brain, that's the green part, and it is responsible for processing information from your senses, storing and retrieving memory, and understanding language. When you recognize something vaguely familiar, the temporal lobe sends a signal to your brain, allowing your brain to communicate a sense of familiarity. Allowing your brain to communicate a sense of familiarity. Déjà vu in French means already seen, and it is used casually to describe the feeling of already knowing an event or recognizing an event as reoccurring. Now I want you to take a step back from your day-to-day life and think about déjà vu on a wider scale. Have you ever thought about moments in history and saw that they seemed eerily familiar to others? Have you ever noticed that moments in history seem to be repeating themselves? An example would be the Aboriginal people of Australia, who found themselves in contact with colonizers after British convicts were sent to their lands. The many atrocities that then occurred against the Aboriginal people were ignored and seen as a consequence of their own inability to assimilate. In Australia's first 140 years as a country, there are over 270 recorded massacres of Aboriginal people. But the event that I will be going in much more depth in is the Trail of Tears, in which from 1836 to 1838, over 100,000 Native Americans were forced west under the supervision of the United States military. During this journey, 10,000 Native Americans died due to illness, loss of food, or the unfamiliar terrain. But why were they pushed out of their lands? Under the supervision of former President Andrew Jackson, the U.S. government sought to expand, and the land they needed was west, in states we now know as Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, and North Carolina. These lands were very fertile, and not only this, but gold was found under these lands, which only increased their value. The only issue for the U.S. government was tribes like the Cherokees, Chickasaws, and Seminoles, which relied on this land for food, water, and other necessities. They relied on this land to survive. This deemed them inhabitants of the land, and therefore they could not legally be removed. So, to combat this, in 1830, the U.S. government passed the Indian Removal Act. This act funded U.S. government officials coming into these tribes' lands in order to coerce them into signing treaties that would allow the military to evict them. Many of these tribes did not even speak English and therefore did not know what they were signing. Today, this would be considered signing a contract under duress, and the contract would be legally void. However, in the 1800s, this was ignored due to racial bias and the monetary values of the United States at the time. It is incredibly sad to understand that generations of Native people were killed, their food and land taken from them. But this idea was only further encouraged by manifest destiny, the idea that America was destined by God to gain land further west, and the belief that Native people were subhuman. This was encouraged by President Andrew Jackson himself, who said, "And it is to suppose that the wandering savage has a stronger attachment to his land than the settled, civilized Christian. He is unwilling to submit to the laws of the state and mingle with its population, to save him from this alternative or utter annihilation. The general government kindly offers him a new home and proposes to pay for the whole expense of his removal and settlement. Here, Andrew Jackson paints a merciful picture of his decision to remove the native people. If the options are removal or death, the former is quite more appealing. This quote not only shows the racist and imperialist mindset of the time, but shows how this eviction was not only supported monetarily, but morally. Today, society now reflects back on this event and views it as an injustice against the native people. It is incredibly hard to believe that society would ever allow an event like this to happen again. However, allow me to introduce you to the Maasai people of Tanzania. The Maasai are a tribe located between the borders of Kenya and Tanzania after different country lines were drawn in the 1800s. Since the 1980s, however, Tanzania has been forcibly removing the Maasai people off their land by selling it to corporations or turning it into tourist areas. These evictions are done, this selling of the land is done without the Maasai's knowledge. And similar to Native Americans, the Maasai have an incredibly rich set of cultures and beliefs. They are a nomadic people and need the land that they have been granted. Although the UN has made calls for Tanzania to stop and recognizes this as an issue, they have only recently done so in 2022. So how is it even allowed to get to this point? When I first found out about the Maasai people, I was shocked. And I started telling everyone I knew about the situation. And not a single person I spoke to was aware of this. It is so easy to lock ourselves in a bubble and feel like the different struggles across the world are so far removed from our own. It is so easy to feel as though the pain and suffering of those across the globe is irrelevant. But it is not irrelevant. This is the same lack of awareness that allows atrocities like what occurred in Australia to happen again in America, to happen again in Tanzania, and all over the world. And these can be combated through global awareness. Global awareness is the ability to understand, work with, empathize, and be knowledgeable on people and cultures with different lived experiences compared to your own. The UN states that when conflict arises, it is because of three main factors: inequality, exclusion, and ignored grievances. So instead of pushing these things away, remain open to conversation. Make sure to talk and hear out both sides and uncover your own biases. In classrooms where teachers have implemented lessons on other cultures, it has been shown that students are more receptive to others' differences. This is because it is easier to understand others when we understand where they come from as well. So now that we know that global awareness can combat these factors, what are steps that you can take to become more globally aware? Well, here are some actionable steps you can take. 1. Be mindful of the conversations that you have with others. Become aware of your own biases and notice how you navigate throughout the world. In studies where participants were partnered with international students and spoke to them for 6 hours each week in either Spanish or English, it was found that participants gained a greater knowledge of the world outside their own. 2. Be curious and research. Now for this one, I want you to think of a country or a place that you've always been curious about. Now, research staples of the culture, the food. Try learning the language. Or immerse yourself in multicultural environments. 3. Never stop learning. I'm not talking about algebra, physics, or chemistry, but never stop learning about the world around you. Keep up in not only local and national news, but global news. Each week, pick a country and look up the news in that country. Never become complacent with the status quo. Just because something is better than its counterpart does not mean there aren't parts of it that can be changed to make it even better. And 4, never doubt your ability to make an impact. There may be times when you are made aware of different things that make you feel hopeless or wondering why nothing has been done to help these people. Take small steps to educate others on the topic. Though you may never really be heard, you can never regret trying. Every day something new is happening in the world. And my hope with this talk is to make you become more conscious of your own privilege and learn to empathize with others. By understanding the world around us, hopefully, we can make a better, safer, more understanding world for everyone.